It takes a mountain of carefully researched evidence to win a logical argument, but sometimes all it takes to win over a crowd is a well-timed punchline. In debate, relying on a punchline is known as the resort to humor or ridicule fallacy. It happens when a speaker injects a joke, a pun, or a mocking remark to cover up their inability or unwillingness to respond appropriately to an opponent's criticism. A valid argument requires a speaker to meet the rebuttal criterion. They have a burden of proof to address serious objections. A joke ignores this, functioning purely as a diversion. It short-circuits critical thinking, blunting legitimate counterarguments without logical justification. When everyone is laughing, pressing for a logical answer feels awkward. Humor in a debate weaponizes that social pressure, making any demand for logical scrutiny feel like a breach of etiquette. During the 1984 presidential election, voters had severe concerns about Ronald Reagan's advanced age and his physical ability to manage a national security crisis. When asked directly about his capacity to handle a crisis during a televised debate, Reagan replied, "I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience." Look at the structure of that exchange. The direct question regarding his crisis management remained totally unanswered. Instead, Reagan steered the conversation around the issue entirely. The extended laughter from the reporters and the audience immediately diffused the tension, and the question of his age was shut down for the rest of the night. Consider another political scenario. A reporter asks a third-party presidential candidate how they plan to pass legislation with a completely uncooperative Congress. The candidate responds, "Well, if I were elected, about half the members of Congress would drop dead of heart attacks, and half of my problem would be solved." This relies on a deeply flawed premise, the literal impossibility of mass casualties serving as a viable legislative strategy. In political arenas, dodging a question with a joke trades accountability for applause. It transforms a massive logical vulnerability into an entertaining soundbite. This tactic appears in everyday environments too. Imagine a college classroom where a philosophy major correctly identifies a logical error their professor made during a lecture and confronts her with it in front of the class. Rather than examining the charge, the professor deflects, saying to the room, "Well, Socrates must have slipped into our class while we weren't looking. I didn't think philosophers were concerned about facts." Let's pause here. Think back to the rules of a valid argument. How exactly does the professor's response violate the rebuttal criterion? The answer is that the professor entirely avoided the actual critique. By making the class laugh at the student, she never evaluated whether the charge against her own reasoning was valid. When an authority figure uses ridicule this way, it serves as a tool for social isolation. It rallies the room against the critic and protects the speaker's fragile logic from any real scrutiny. Defeating this tactic is incredibly difficult. Pointing out a logical fallacy to a laughing crowd makes you immediately look defensive and humorless. To bypass this trap, you first have to absorb the blow. If the joke is genuinely clever, show appropriate appreciation to diffuse the immediate social tension. Then comes the vital step. You pivot back to your original claim, reiterate the basic criticism, and firmly insist on a serious response. Here is your playbook to neutralize this fallacy. 1. Identify the dodge. 2. Absorb the blow. And 3. Pivot and press back to the facts. Your goal isn't to kill the joke, but to separate the punchline's entertainment value from their logical burden of proof. By mastering this technique, you strip the smokescreen away. You force your opponent's argument to stand, or fall, on its facts, instead of hiding behind a punchline.